Welcome back to From Seed to Pantry. In this episode, we'll be talking about hardening off your vegetables, setting up your square foot garden outside, and what vegetables you could be growing right now if you're in zone 5 or 6. So let's get growing. Okay, so let's talk about the process of hardening off. So your seedlings have been sitting inside growing probably the last couple months under very controlled conditions. Most people keep their house between 68 and 72 degrees. They're under artificial lights. They're not really getting very much wind. So before we pull them outside and expose them to the ever-changing elements, we need to acclimate them or harden them off. So this process takes between 5 and 7 days. And you want to kind of increase the time that they're outside each day. For the first 3 days, you want to make sure that they're not in direct sunlight. So if you have like an overhang or something like that where you can put them under in order to get them some filtered sunlight, that'd be good. If not, you'll need to wait for some cloudy days. So for the first 3 days, you want to put them outside when it's either cloudy or underneath some shade and give them some filtered sunlight, increasing the time each day. You do not want to leave them out overnight for the first few days. Just give them a couple hours each day and kind of increase the time. After the first 3 days, you can start exposing them to the sunlight directly. So you're going to take them outside, put them under the direct sunlight, and bring them in at night. And you want to increase the time that they're outside each day. If you're going a full week, by the 6th day, you can leave them out overnight, leave them out all day, and get them exposed to all the elements, get the changing temperatures. And this is just going to help them when you transplant them to when the temperatures do change, as they do typically in the spring especially, that they're not going to be shocked. So you want to make sure, give them 5 to 7 days to acclimate. 5 is the minimum. If you can do 7, that'd be great. After that, you're ready to actually start transplanting the outside. So the next section, we're going to talk about actually setting up your square foot garden so we can actually transplant them. You're going to need a few things. You're going to need some type of string, tape in order to tie the string off, measuring tape, and then a knife or some scissors in order to actually cut the string to length. So we'll go over to the garden next and I'll actually show you how to set this up. All right, now we're going to set up our actual square foot garden and actually show you how we do this. So the first thing we're going to need to do is set up our measuring tape. And we're going to want to find a spot in our garden and set it up. So you're going to want to follow along and find your 1, 2. So this one is about 39 inches across. So we're going to set up our 1 foot squares at the 1, 2, and 3 foot areas. So we take this to the edge. We'll set it up. Find a 3 foot section. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a piece of tape, stick it down, and I'm going to draw this string all the way down. Initially, don't worry about where the string's at. You want to get a rough estimate, and then you can take your measuring tape and kind of figure out the exact places it needs to go afterwards. You just want to get your strings approximately in the right areas and approximately the right lengths. And then you'll actually measure them out and make sure they're in the proper spots. That's the first one. Come around here, find where the 2 foot mark is, give myself another piece of tape. Tape at the edge here. Find the 2 foot mark. And again, when you're initially setting this up, just get it approximate and you'll adjust it as you go. Make sure your tape's good and secure on your ends. You can do the reason I use the tape is it doesn't matter what type of box you're going to use. If you have wood, concrete like I do, metal, the tape will work good as far as securing your string. Get that second piece. Make sure you give yourself a little bit of slack. That way if you have to adjust it, you have some room to adjust your string. And then last one here. Find my 1 foot mark, and this one I'll have to go on the inside of the guard and actually get this one. All right, so and I know it looks a little sloppy right now, but as you get everything set up, you'll draw it tight and you'll line it up. So you're just getting your initial lines out. This one's a long bed, so this one takes a little bit longer to set up. So now that you have your strings out here, you want to try to line them up on your 1 foot marks. Then kind of move your tape measure down periodically, get it to the edge, and then line up your square foots. So you got 1 square foot there. It's a little slippery out here today, so we got a lot of rain, as we do in spring. You're just gonna kind of want to go down and align these as best you can to your marks. Okay, come down there, and there, and then our final set. We want to make sure we're very precise with these. These are going to kind of be where we anchor things at. Bring our tape down. Make sure we're lined up good. And then kind of pull it tight and tape your end. Pull your string tight, make sure you get all the slack out. You want to make sure you have good 1 foot sections. These are going to set you up for actually planting your garden the most efficient way possible. Okay, now you got the 1 foot sections here. Now we're going to go across and do the same things. I'll do that and I'll come back and show you the final results. So this is what your grid pattern should look like when you're done. Each one should be approximately 1 square foot, and based off the size of your garden, you may have some extra areas that are not completely square. All depends on the size and the shape of your garden. So this is kind of what it should look like. Like I said, each one of these are approximately 1 square foot, and then you can use that when you're planting to put your plants in there based off of the number of square feet needed for each of the plants. So this should be your final product, or something similar to this. And again, this was just measuring with some string, duct tape, and a measuring tape, and just making sure you have 1 foot squares. If it's not completely perfect, that's okay. This is a guideline for you to use when you plant your garden. All right, now that we have our square foot garden all laid out, it's time to actually start planting our plants. So we're going to refer to our guide that we have. So this is the one that we made earlier. And we're going to plant according to this. So we'll put our broccoli in. So what we're going to plant right now, so cool weather stuff that we can plant in April. We got the broccoli here we can plant. We can plant our peas. So we can plant our peas. We can plant our broccoli. And we can do our onions. And we can do our carrots. So I'm just going to show you right now the broccoli in there. So I'm going to put some of the broccoli where we said we're going to, and then we'll go from there. All right, now I have all of my broccoli plants laid out. So I'm going to show you how we're going to plant one of these. So we're going to take our broccoli that we have here, and we're going to dig a hole in our square foot. So broccoli is going to be 1 per square foot. So we want to make sure we dig a hole deep enough to put this whole plant in there. So you can see there we got a pretty deep hole compared to the plant size, and we're going to stick that in there. So prior to doing that, I'm going to put a little bit of this crab and lobster shell in here. This is just kind of a natural fertilizer. I'm just going to stick a handful of it in there. It kind of is like a slow release natural fertilizer that will continue to feed the plants. And then we'll take this out of the container, and then tuck the dirt right back around it. Make sure we're not covering up the leaves. And then pat that down. And then there's our first broccoli. And I'm going to repeat that for the rest of these. All right, so we got all of our broccoli planted. As you can see here, there's 1 broccoli plant per square foot, as per the plan. So here's another little neat contraption for helping you with square foot gardening. So this is something that my wife picked up from Amazon, but this thing is set up for square foot gardening. So each one of these holes are set up for different spacing. So these yellow ones here, these are set up for your 16 squares. So if you have 4 and 4, so for example, carrots are spaced 3 inches apart. You could put your carrots directly in here and they'd be spaced properly apart. There's ones in here for 9 squares, and then there's also ones for 4 squares, and then for your center square as well. So this is a useful tool for using for when you're planting direct seeding, which is what we're going to do next with the peas. So the peas are spaced about 3 inches apart, so I'm going to set this over onto the pea area, and we're going to go and start planting, direct sowing our peas. All right, so now I have my first tool set up for here. So we're looking at the pea packet here, and the peas are supposed to be spaced 4 inches apart. So we're going to use, in this case, we're going to use the red ones because these are spaced 4 inches apart. So I'm going to poke my holes down in here for each one of these. And then I'm going to put a pea in each one of the holes. Drop a pea down. Drop one down. And then this will set this up for proper spacing. And then I just got to fill in the dirt for these once I get them done. So in this case, I'll have 9 pea plants per square foot, which is spaced 4 inches apart. All right, so let's look at what we've planted so far this season. So right now we're in April here in Zone 6. So the plants that you can plant outside right now are any of your brassicas like broccoli. You can plant spinach, you can plant carrots, peas. That's all the time for now. So here's our broccoli that we have planted. So I got 1 per square as per the directions for square foot gardening. And then for here, I direct sowed peas in. So when you're direct sowing things, make sure you label all the spaces that you direct sow things so that you know what you planted. So in each one of these, there's 9 pea plants per square because the spacing on the peas are 4 inches apart. So I've got 6 squares worth of peas here. And then coming to the other gardens here, in here, on this side of it, we have carrots. So I put my labels down here for the carrots so that I know that the carrots are in here. And then I'll fill in this other part later here during the other season. And then in these gardens here is the garlic that I planted last fall. So garlic you plant in October time frame to come up in the spring, and you'll harvest it in this area in about July, August time frame. And then in this bed here, we have the oregano that was from last season. In here we have onions. These are also something you can plant this time of year in zones 5 and 6. They like the cool weather and they'll come up towards the end of the year. And then the final things that I planted right here are my lettuce. As you can see, the lettuce is in various different sizes. I started them each set of these about 2 weeks apart. That way I'm not getting all my lettuce at the same time. So let's talk about maintaining our raised beds now that we have our plants in there. So you want to make sure you're watering your plants at least once a week. You want to make sure you're giving them a good 1 inch of water every week. Ideally, you use a soaker hose to bottom water them. That way you're not putting any contaminants that may be in your soil back into the leaves of the plants themselves. You can do that by installing a soaker hose, and I'll show you on the next episode on how we're going to do that. The other thing I highly recommend is that you mulch your beds. What the mulching of the beds do, you can use, I would recommend you use a cedar mulch or some type of straw or something like that. Don't use anything that has a dye in it. You don't want those dyes leaching into your plants. But the mulch itself is going to help maintain moisture in your raised beds, and it's going to prevent them from drying out. It's more important during the summertime when you get these hot 80, 90 degree days. This mulch is going to help maintain the water in there so that if you do go a little bit longer for in between waterings, your plants aren't going to suffer. Also, if you mulch your beds, it's going to help prevent weeds from growing in between your plants. And that's it for this episode of From Seed to Pantry. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. In the next episode, we'll be talking about starting potatoes in containers and talking about how to set up your bottom watering for your raised beds. Until next time, happy gardening.